Hey guys, Essayist here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're doing another episode of the Sword and Sorcery Book Club. Today we're looking at Conan, number 23. This is the cover I got. It's cover B by Greg Staples. I just think the Dan Panosian cover this time was not really my favorite, and I was able to, catch that early enough that I could get my comic book store to pick up this edition instead. So, I don't really want to harp too much on the cover because Dan Panosian does good work. It's just this specific cover for this issue was not really my favorite. I'll show it to you on the screen now. But basically, the silly face that Conan was doing wasn't really working for me, and the way that the composition wasn't really centered on the page kind of felt weird. Like, Conan's the main guy, he's spreading his arms out, but then Zula's behind him doing this cool, pose, and it's off-center, and it doesn't really work for me. I think that a pose where maybe Conan was doing something down below, and then Zula was doing something up top, and then centered would have been much better, right? So I just didn't like it that much, and this Greg Staples cover just looked so cool. I think this sword is supposed to be like the sword in the movie, and of course, we see Conan on top of this, like forest giant, I guess you could call it. Not really sure what it is, but it looks pretty awesome, right? And this version of Conan here, I guess, doesn't look really like what you would imagine Conan looks like. I think he looks more like a Pict maybe or something like that, especially the Picts in the Hyperborean age, but he still looks really cool. So yeah, let's jump into this. It's written by Jim Zub. It has art by the phenomenal Fernando Danino, although he did have a few moments here and there in this issue that I didn't quite like. And of course, the coloring here is done by Diego Rodriguez, and the lettering by Richard Starkings, and editing by Chris Butera. It opens up with Conan and Zula interacting with each other once again. Zula, at the end of the last issue, knocked out Amyth-Bast, and now he's here to save Conan's Himerian hide, obviously. And, well, they have a bit of an interaction there where they're just kind of catching up, like, what's going on, how are you doing, Conan is being kind of like silly, in my opinion. I mean, not really, but his the way that he and Zula exchange dialogue has a bit of a rhythm to it that you're gonna see in like modern kind of movies where they have a little bit of a snipey dialogue between each other, where he's like, oh, I could have done it on my own, and he's like, yeah, sure you could, but you seem like you were having trouble, and it was like, oh no, I was trying to catch you unaware and stuff like that. And it's like, sure, man, that sort of thing you can see in more modern movies. You wouldn't necessarily associate it with Conan, but it's not bad by any means. It's just an observation I had. I did enjoy this conversation they had. It was kind of fun, and it's enjoyable, and it also provides a lot of characterization for both of them. And then Zula frees Conan from these manacles he was on, or enchained in, and then they continue on. Apparently, Zula has been trying to infiltrate the city because he's trying to undermine the power of Keshata as they rise to prominence, and Set seems to be gaining, more power, more influence in the world in some way, right? And they mentioned Thotamon, who has been paying attention to Amyth-Bast recently. He's the ruler of the city, more or less, and Amyth-Bast's movements, with Conan specifically gaining her traction and power and interest, has been leading Thotamon to pay more attention to her, right? And so it turns out that she's going to have a meeting with him, and Conan asks Zula, should we kill him? Should we get rid of him? And Zula's like, if only. He's very strong. We can't really do that, but we can at least go talk to him, right? And so Zula changes forms. He becomes a woman. He shapeshifts into his female form, and then using a knife, he gathers some of Amyth-Bast's blood, and in an interesting kind of like Hela-esque kind of motion with his hands, he becomes Amyth-Bast, and it looks really phenomenal here. Let me see if I can show you. There you go. Amazing work there by Fernando Danino. I like the way that he, kind of sculpts the character muscles through there. And then Conan and Amyth-Bast walk through the streets of Keshata in this kind of very fun, kind of outfit that they're wearing. I really like how Conan's red, guard thing looks, his armor. And as he and Zula in Amyth-Bast's body walk through this town, they get kind of approached by this little old wizard, right? And this little guy is trying to get Amyth-Bast's attention, and he's like, you know, just because you're popular now doesn't mean that you get to to ignore me. And she kind of tries to play it off. You know, I don't know if Zula knows what Amyth-Bast is like, so what he does is just kind of politely tells him to stop, or that they're going to talk later. And the little guy, the little wizard, I think realizes that something's up, right? And so he starts to call upon you know, attention from other people around, and Conan just gets fed up and he just starts attacking people, and he manages to it seems like strike through the neck of a character, and then it seems like the same character then strikes Conan in the arm. He slashes his arm. So maybe it's not the same character, maybe it's two characters that look quite similar. It's kind of unclear. It doesn't really make too much of a difference either, but it does seem like Conan strikes down one guy, and I guess the wizard is followed by two guards, so the other guard attacks him, right? And then the little wizard is trying to gather power in order to attack Amyth-Bast and Amra, you know, the name that Conan uses, and Zula quickly manages to choke the guy out and then grab his hair, pull it up, and then decapitate him, right? At the same time as Conan dispatches the second guardman. And this is where I have a bit of an issue with Fernando de Niño's artwork. In general, it's really, really phenomenal. It looks really great. But there is one panel here that just doesn't work for me. It really took me out of the reading experience, because suddenly I was like, oh, Conan has flexible powers like Mr. Fantastic. You see that panel there? I like the bulging of the muscles in the arm as you see Conan swinging to grab him, right? But his head looks like it's like his neck is twice as long as it really would be, and it just doesn't quite work for me. It's not really that big of a deal in the broad scheme of things, but you know, when I was reading it, I did have to stop and chuckle a little bit at the proportions there. But then I continued on, and it was a really phenomenal book. It's just very minimal hit or miss kind of moments here with Fernando de Niño's artwork. In general, he's really, really amazing, and I quite like his storytelling. The way that he draws is really, really enjoyable, right? So they kill these men, and then they go and leave them in like some sort of alcove in the middle of nowhere, where there's some jars full of, you know, wine presumably, but maybe blood, and they leave them there for whoever might find them later. Then they continue on towards the center of the town. They go into this interesting like staircase thing leading up to this serpent tower, where it seems like there's two guards at the door who only want Amyth-Bast to enter, but she says that she will not leave without her bodyguard, and so Thotamon kind of sends a projection to his guards to allow the guard to come with her. And so Conan and Zula, in the body of Amyth-Bast, manage to get in, and they enjoy this really interesting entrance into this Chamber of Secrets looking thing, where we see Thotamon sitting on this awesome like Hydra looking chair, where you see a lot of different cobra heads, and this really just phenomenal thing there. Like, that just looks so cool. I love that. I think it's so great. Fernando de Niño's artwork really is, broadly speaking, phenomenal most of the time, right? And there's only just very minimal issues here and there. And then they have a bit of a bad guy standoff there, where Thotamon is like, do you want some wine? And the Amyth-Bast is like, oh, no, I'm good. And he's like, I'm not poisoning it, I promise. You should be protected while you're here for a while. And he drinks the wine himself, and he's like, if I wanted you dead, you would be dead. No doubt about that, right? And so they continue talking, and they discuss Amyth-Bast's recent popularity thanks to Amra the Lion. He asks, you know, is this the same guy that is the brigand of the Black Coast? And Conan's like, no, which I don't think actually works. I'm sure Thotamon knows that it is the same guy, right? And then Amyth-Bast kind of interjects in order to try to push away attention from Conan, and they discuss that their cause is moving, right? And this is when Thotamon kind of starts dialoguing, right? He's like, you know, power shifts across lands and across time. You know, some allegiances we have seem to not be working out the way they do. he talks about Tulsa Doom's grand death cult and about this wizard Natok, the Veiled One. So the Tulsa Doom death cult, I think, is a reference to the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and then Natok, the Veiled One, of course, is from Black Colossus. And he talks about the fact that these different sorcerers who are gathering power should be doing so for the sake of the grand plan that it has for everyone, but they're not doing so. They're actually doing it for their own power. And so this is a problem, right? As Thotamon turns to kind of go back to his throne, Conan feels the need to strike at him, right? He's about to grab his dagger and pull it out and stab him in the back, but in the last moment, Conan manages to stop himself from doing this. Thotamon sits down, and in the shadows, you see his face kind of look more like a skeleton, a little bit deformed, a little bit crazy, kind of like he's not really human anymore. He is something other, right? The dark magic has seeped into his body and changed his form in some way, right? And he brings Amyth-Bast closer to him, and he discusses that the time is coming for war with the stars, or he says constellations, but really he's talking about eldritch horror beings, I guess, coming down to the earth from the sky in order to do battle, which I think is supposed to be a reference to the Shumagorath character that we saw at the end of Blackstone, right? And he talks about Amyth-Bast's power. She says she's strong, and then he grabs her, and he's like, yes, you are definitely strong, but he kind of makes a comment about the fact that she would be strong as a broodmother for Set's children, right? Which I guess is supposed to be what happened to the character that we see in the Solomon Kane comic book, right? That character is also kind of like the mother of a tribe of serpent men, and I guess that this is tying them together in some way, right? But he sees as he looks into her that she has been touched by Set, right? Which is actually not true. Amyth-Bast has not been touched by Set, at least as far as we know. But of course, Zula has, which is why he's their mortal enemy. And of course, if he looked at Conan in the same way, he might have seen that he has also been touched by Set in some way because of the previous arc where he was attacked by the twin fangs, right? Or the fangs of Set. Like that weird knife, right? And as he realizes that Amyth-Bast has been touched by Set, or really Zula has been touched by Set, he gets angry, and he goes kind of neurotic and kind of psychotic here, and he turns almost into this demon-looking thing as he, worries that she is a challenger for his power, that is a usurper to his throne as the leader of the forces that fall under Set, right? And then he has this crazy scream that brings out this eldritch kind of manifestation, right? This thing that is kind of like serpents, kind of like death, kind of like crocodiles, like very, very, very cool. And it looks awesome right there. Very phenomenal. I love this. And of course, his body doesn't even look human anymore. He looks more like a weird shape-shifting monster, right? A little bit like a vampire, a little bit like a werewolf, kind of like a monkey as well. He just has this horrifying look to him. And he kind of starts yelling, and at this point, I think he's not talking to Conan or Amyth-Bast. He's really talking to Set, right? He yells, "Are you testing me? Am I unworthy of your abilities, of your immortal coil? Have I not done everything in my power for you and your children?" Right? And Conan kind of fights back against this wave of dark magic. He starts to get closer in order to try to attack him. And as Conan is about to seemingly strike the death blow, the air stills. He comes back to himself and he says no, and he stops him, right? He says that we will not fight today. And so he calms down. He goes back to being his sinister, kind of like well-controlled self. And he's like, well, if Set has willed it this way, I guess you will continue on as you are. And he lets them leave, right? Mostly, I think it's a manifestation of how corrupted the magic has made him, right? It has really destroyed his mind in such a way that he really is just kind of very easily moved to dangerous, kind of conditions and thought processes, right? But easily can turn back to normal. And it's very cool. I really, really enjoyed this moment here. And then as they leave, Conan and Zula realize that it's been a long time. They've been in there for longer than they anticipated, and that it's almost time for the sunrise, right? And so they have to leave because Zula's spell only will last until the morning. And so they return, they run through the night to get to Amyth-Bast's home. And when they arrive, she's gone. And of course, this is because she's woken and she probably is getting ready to track them down and kill them. And as she moves on, and as they get ready to try to go and find her, the alarm of the town kind of goes off. People are blowing their horns, and they're raising the alarm to go hunt Conan specifically, but also Zula in kind of by association throughout the city. And so this is where the story ends, and it was really, really phenomenal. I really loved it. I thought it was amazing. Then, of course, we have an essay by Jeff Shanks. This one talks about the kind of development of the land of Stigia. Stigia is basically the Hyborian version of Egypt, right? Within the context of the way, Robert E. Howard looked at the world. But in the Therian age, Stigia wasn't really there quite yet. There was the river Stagus, or Stigas, but it is not quite what would turn into Stigia just yet. And even further back in the time of the Acheron, which I think is the empire that started humanity for the first time, or maybe it was like the empires of like the not human intelligent races. I can't remember quite well. So if you guys know exactly what we're referring to, please let me know down below what is Acheron properly, right? But out of the ashes of Acheron and through the development of Aquilonia and Numidia, certain groups started to become Stygians, right? And we can even see a mention of the nomadic people of Shem getting freed from Stygia, which is kind of like the Exodus story, right? If Stygia is Egypt and Shem is Israel, or like the original nation of people from Israel, that's what it is, right? The Jewish tradition. And it was really cool. It was a good essay. It was not necessarily my favorite. I think that in this case, Stygia is not that interesting to me personally. I find myself more interested in other regions of the world, even though most of the important villains from the Hyborian age and the Therian age are kind of these like Stygian, kind of like characters, right? But it was still a really great essay. It was kind of similar to some of the stuff we talked about in our interaction last time in the Sumerian Council episode, where I had Jeff Shanks over, and we discussed some of the stuff that we've seen previously, like Eldritch Horror and the Robert E. Howard stories, but also discussed the fact that Robert E. Howard is the creator of the serpent men kind of concept, and the lizard people, kind of conspiracies and stuff come directly from his writings, right? Which is kind of funny. It's kind of interesting. I assume that people that are really into those conspiracies will not accept that that is where the tradition comes from. But at the same time, there is a very clear, line of knowledge that goes back there. And Robert E. Howard was not some occultist. He was not some person that was trying to say that he had greater knowledge. He was just making up stories, and people seem to have decided to believe that those stories were true. And then it kind of got out of hand, and it became this stuff that we see now, this crazy lizard people conspiracy, which is pretty interesting. I mean, some of the stuff that's come out of that is really cool, like the Lizardophiles. If you guys watch Area 52, who's a UFO channel, the Lizardophiles are a pretty cool, interesting story where the lizard people are underground dwellers, and they're also not evil, which is kind of unusual in the lizard people kind of mythos, right? Which is pretty cool. And then that's basically it for this story. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know what you think about it down below. In terms of the channel, there's a few things that I wanted to talk about. So obviously this video was supposed to come out on Wednesday or Thursday, and I didn't manage to make it happen for a few reasons, none of which are too interesting or meaningful to you guys, but basically it was just because I had to finish up with schooling for the summer. I have a week off coming up, and then I have to start schooling for the fall, but because I had to finish projects, I didn't have time to record this video. And then in the last couple of days, one of my old friends, my old roommate, came up because it was his hooting ceremony for his PhD program, and I've been hosting him and his family for the last couple of days, so I haven't really been able to do anything else. So this will be this weekend's video. Then Monday or Tuesday, I will release the Spearing Fang video for the Road to Scourge of the Serpent, and then we'll see what happens in the rest of the week. But there should be another video for the Scourge of the Serpent reading event either Wednesday or Sunday. Sorry, I'm not really sure quite what day I'm going to release it on, but that should continue on, and then we'll see if we can weave in other things throughout the months coming up to that, right? So there you go. Those all the things I had to say to you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time.